You want to know why traders fail? Because they start every trade like a gambler and end every loss like an investor. They refuse to take a small loss, and so they earn a big one. They never learn that the only risk worth taking is the one you can afford to lose. That's the whole game, but almost no one plays it that way. In this video, I'm going to show you why most traders destroy themselves not from bad trades, but from bad thinking. You'll learn how professionals see risk, how they measure it, and why true profit never comes from prediction, only from protection. If you've ever felt like the market was rigged against you, it's not. It's just testing your discipline. And by the end of this lesson, you'll see risk not as something to fear, but as the only tool that keeps you alive long enough to win. What I'm about to teach you isn't theory. It's what I paid for in losses, time, and blood. Let me ask you, how many times have you taken a profit too soon, only to watch the stock keep running? Or held onto a loser, waiting for it to come back, because selling meant admitting you were wrong? I've done both. Every trader has. That's the trap the market sets for the inexperienced. It punishes impatience on the way up and pride on the way down. The real mistake isn't losing money. It's refusing to learn what the loss is trying to teach you. Most traders never make it because they're trading emotion, not evidence. But I'll show you how I broke that habit and how you can too. In this series, we'll break down exactly why 9 out of 10 traders fail and what the 10th one does differently. We'll talk about risk, how to size it, how to limit it, and how to respect it. We'll dissect the mental habits that separate the gambler from the operator, the difference between chasing money and mastering timing. You'll hear real stories from my own trades, both the wins and the mistakes that nearly ended me. And as we go deeper, I'll reveal the 3 laws that guided every fortune I ever made and every fortune I ever lost. So stay with me. What you're about to learn isn't about getting rich fast. It's about learning to stay rich by not going broke. Because the only real edge in the market is survival. When a man first steps into the market, profit is all he can think about. He sees the ticker as a machine that prints money, not lessons. And that's exactly why the market teaches him the hard way. Here's something most people completely miss. The market doesn't start by punishing you. It starts by rewarding you just enough to make you dangerous. It gives you a few quick wins, just enough to taste success, and that small taste does more damage than any loss ever could. I remember my first taste. I was a boy working in a brokerage office, marking quotes on the board. I started with $5 in a bucket shop, and within a few days, I had turned it into 1,000. At 15, that felt like mastery. I thought I'd cracked the code. What I didn't understand was that the market was just baiting the hook. It was letting me win so it could study how I behaved when I thought I couldn't lose. Every boom works the same way. In the beginning, it rewards the reckless, the ones who trade without discipline, the ones who can't resist touching every button that flashes green. They think the market loves them. In truth, it's only identifying them. Those easy profits mark you like blood in the water marks a wounded fish. You see, small wins create the illusion of control. A few points here, a few there, you start believing you've outsmarted the crowd. That's the most dangerous moment in a trader's life, because luck disguised as skill breeds confidence without foundation. And when confidence outruns experience, the next mistake is never small. I learned that when my 1,000 vanished faster than it came. One bad streak, one wrong turn, and all that pride turned into panic. That was my real education. The market didn't need to ruin me. It just needed to show me that I was willing to ruin myself. So when you see those early wins, don't celebrate them. Study them. Ask yourself what they're trying to teach you. If a gain makes you careless, it isn't profit, it's poison. I've watched traders lose half their fortune and still call themselves successful because they made money last week. They count the trades that worked and ignore the ones that didn't. They don't keep records of their mistakes because they can't stand the truth. But truth is the only capital that lasts. Think of it this way. The market is like a mirror. It doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, and it doesn't care. If you're greedy, it shows greed. If you're afraid, it shows fear. The reflection changes only when you do. And here's the real trap: profit feels like progress, even when it's just practice for disaster. A man wins a few trades, and suddenly every tick looks like an opportunity. He starts forcing action, chasing motion instead of meaning. He calls it momentum. I call it restlessness. He's not trading the market anymore, he's trading his need to be right. That's why most traders fail before they ever really begin. They confuse being active with being accurate, being busy with being effective. The market rewards that confusion with temporary success, and then it collects the debt with interest. When I say, profits take care of themselves, losses never do, that's not a slogan. It's a law. The moment you think the game is about profit, you've already abandoned discipline. You'll hold a losing trade because you're sure it'll come back. You'll cut a winner because you're afraid it might disappear. And in doing so, you'll reverse the only formula that ever works. Cut losses short. Let profits run. I call this the false god of profit. It promises security, but it demands obedience. The more you worship it, the less you see. You start to measure success by how much you make, not by how well you trade. But speculation isn't about money, it's about behavior. The money is just the scorecard that tells you whether your behavior is correct. So let me put it plainly. If you chase profit, you'll end up chasing your own shadow. But if you protect capital, profit will eventually chase you. That's the inversion that separates the 90% who lose from the few who last. A farmer doesn't dig up his seeds every morning to see if they've grown. He waters, he waits, and he protects the soil. But traders dig up their trades every hour, desperate to measure growth instead of nurturing it. They ruin what might have prospered because they can't stop checking the scoreboard. Protect your soil. That's your capital. Because once the ground is gone, no crop will grow again. Now that you understand how profit seduces and destroys, let's talk about what every great trader eventually learns: risk isn't the enemy. Misunderstanding it is. Most traders think risk is something to be feared, a threat to be avoided, a danger they must dodge at every turn. But that's because they've never learned what risk actually is. I learned the hard way that risk is not your enemy. It's your only ally. Without risk, there's no discipline, no structure, no survival. Risk is the price you pay to stay in the game long enough to win. And yet most traders spend their whole careers trying to escape it. They hedge every move. They overanalyze every tick. They trade small, not because it's wise, but because they're scared. And fear never saved a trader. It only delays the loss. The truth is, you can't eliminate risk. You can only respect it. And the man who refuses to do that doesn't just lose his money, he loses his judgment. When I was a young man, I thought control meant predicting the next move. I thought success came from being right more often than wrong. That illusion cost me more than any bear market ever could. You don't control the market by guessing direction. You control your fate by knowing exactly how much you're willing to lose when you're wrong. That's the difference between the speculator and the gambler. A gambler hopes the next card saves him. A speculator decides in advance what losing will cost him, and he pays it without hesitation. Every trade you make should be like an insurance policy against your own mistakes. You're not betting on the market. You're protecting yourself from your own weakness. I remember the northern Pacific corner of 1901 like it happened yesterday. The market was in chaos. Men were shouting, tickers running behind by the minute. And I was right, dead right about the direction. I saw the break coming, but my execution lagged. My exposure was too heavy, and by the time my orders hit, I'd lost a fortune. That day I learned something that no book or formula could teach me. Being right is meaningless if your size is wrong. The market doesn't pay you for correctness. It pays you for control. My analysis was perfect, but my risk was reckless, and the result was ruin. That day, I stopped asking how much I could make and started asking how much I could stand to lose. It was the turning point in my entire career. You see, the mathematics of survival are merciless. Losing 10% of your capital takes 11% to recover. Lose 50%, and you'll need 100 just to get even. But that's arithmetic most traders never bother to calculate because they don't plan to lose, and yet that's the only plan that ever works. Professionals don't focus on their win rate. They focus on the ratio between what they risk and what they stand to gain. A man who wins 6 out of 10 trades but risks too much will still go broke faster than the man who wins only 4 out of 10 but manages his losses ruthlessly. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune, if your losses are small and your gains are allowed to breathe. Capital preservation isn't glamorous, but it's oxygen, and no one climbs high without it. Most traders treat capital like a renewable resource, something they can always replace. That's their first fatal mistake. Capital is not fuel. It's life. Once it's gone, the game is over. I've seen men blow up not because the market changed, but because they couldn't stop pressing their luck. They refused to take a small loss, so they earned a big one. They thought they were showing conviction, but all they were showing was denial. You must understand that the ability to accept a small loss is not weakness. It's strength, the kind of strength that keeps you alive. The man who cannot lose small will someday lose everything, and usually when he can least afford it. Think of a ship's captain sailing through a storm. He doesn't survive by pretending the waves aren't there. He survives by steering within their rhythm, by knowing when to trim the sails and when to let them fill. Risk works the same way. You can't fight it, you can only navigate it. Every trade is a voyage, and your stop-loss is the lifeboat. You may not like the idea of abandoning ship, but it's better than sinking with it. Most traders go down not because the storm was too strong, but because they were too proud to step into the boat when they still could. That's why I say risk is your compass, not your cage. It shows you where safety lies, not where profit hides. Every successful trader I've ever known had one thing in common. He was never surprised by a loss. He may have hated it, but he planned for it. The amateur sees a loss and thinks something went wrong. The professional sees a loss and thinks, that's the cost of doing business. The difference between them is emotional. One takes losses personally, the other takes them professionally. Once you learn to accept risk as your partner, everything changes. You stop gambling. You stop chasing. You stop needing to be right. The market no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a mirror showing you how much control you really have over yourself. That's when you stop asking, what will the market do? And start asking, what will I do when it does? That's the real question, and the only one that matters. So remember this. The market doesn't care if you win or lose. It only cares whether you can keep showing up. And you can't show up without capital. Every dollar you save by cutting a loss early is another chance to be in the game when the right opportunity comes. I never made my millions by being right all the time. I made them by being alive when the big move arrived. Once you see risk this way as your compass, not your cage, you start thinking differently. You stop fearing it, and you start using it. That's when you cross the line between the gambler and the operator. But even then, there's another trap waiting. Because managing risk is one thing, but mastering discipline, that's something else entirely. Most traders never reach that point. They learn the numbers, they understand the math, but they never conquer the mind. And until they do, they'll always be ruled by the same emotions that ruin everyone else. Let's go deeper into that next, because the market doesn't punish ignorance. It punishes emotion, and the ones who can't master themselves. No system or strategy will ever save them. Every trader believes he can outthink his emotions until the market proves otherwise. The market has a way of exposing you, stripping every layer of confidence until you're left facing your rawest impulses. Fear when the screen turns red, greed when it turns green, and that quiet whisper of hope that tells you, maybe this time it'll be different. But it's never different. I've seen more fortunes lost to hope than to bad analysis. Hope is what keeps a man from selling when he should, and fear is what keeps him from buying when he must. They're opposites on the surface, but twins in effect. Both paralyze judgment. Both distort truth. Both make you believe the market owes you something. I learned that lesson when the ticker stopped being numbers and started being a reflection of my nerves. When you're new, every tick feels personal. A stock drops and it feels like an insult. It rises and you feel clever, vindicated. But the market doesn't know you exist. It isn't plotting against you or rewarding you for effort. It's simply recording the sum of all human behavior, the greed, the panic, the euphoria written in prices. Once you grasp that, you stop taking it personally, and only then can you begin to see clearly. The mistake most traders make is thinking they can control their emotions by ignoring them. You can't silence them. You can only out-discipline them. The operator's calm doesn't come from feeling nothing. It comes from acting the same no matter what he feels. That's the entire battle, mastering behavior under pressure, not eliminating emotion altogether. In the panic of 1929, when I was short while the whole country was long, I saw fear turn grown men into children. They froze. They couldn't sell, couldn't think. They'd made money for years and believed that made them wise. But when the tide turned, wisdom vanished. The same men who laughed at me for warning them months earlier now begged for miracles. I didn't make millions because I was smarter. I made them because I wasn't afraid to act when fear was thick enough to choke the air. The truth is, courage in the market isn't about bravery. It's about preparation. When you've accepted what you can lose, when you've planned for disaster, fear has nothing left to feed on. But even once you've conquered fear, you face its shadow impatience. The hardest work in speculation isn't analysis, it's waiting. Waiting for the right setup, waiting for confirmation, waiting for your profit to mature. Most traders can't do it. They mistake activity for progress, motion for mastery. They need the excitement, the constant buzz of trades clicking, the illusion of control. I've watched men ruin perfect trades because they couldn't leave them alone. They take profits too soon, convinced that a gain isn't real until it's in their pocket. They cut the flower and water the weed, and then wonder why their garden dies. I used to do the same. I'd take a small profit and feel relief, then watch the stock climb another 20 points without me. The pain of missing out is sharper than the pain of losing. That's what traps most traders. But I learned something that changed everything for me. It was never my thinking that made the big money. It was my sitting tight. That's not laziness. That's discipline of the highest kind. You can't sit tight unless you've done your thinking beforehand. You can't wait unless you trust your process more than your feelings. The market rewards patience the way a farmer rewards time by multiplying it. The crowd hates waiting. The crowd must always be doing something. They buy too soon, sell too soon, talk too much, listen too little. They chase noise and call it strategy. They confuse movement with opportunity. And that's why the market exists, to collect a toll from every act of impatience. Every tick is a tax on the restless. The professionals don't trade more because they know more. They trade less because they've learned that most of the time, there's nothing to do. You don't get paid for action. You get paid for accuracy. And accuracy requires silence, patience, and restraint, qualities the 90% will never develop. Discipline, in the end, isn't a decision you make once. It's a habit you build every day. I've known traders who could hold a winning position with calm precision, but the moment they took a loss, they unraveled completely. They'd swear to stick to their rules, then break them as soon as the next opportunity appeared. They didn't need a new system. They needed a stronger spine. The best trades are often the hardest to take, the ones that go against the crowd, the ones that make your stomach turn. That's when discipline matters most. If you wait for comfort, you'll never act. And if you act without discipline, you'll never last. Think of a soldier. He doesn't train for battle so he can feel brave when the bullets fly. He trains so his hands move automatically, so his mind stays clear under chaos. That's what trading discipline is: muscle memory for the mind. You drill your rules until they replace instinct. You build habits so solid that emotion can't break them. I've spent nights reviewing trades that went wrong, not because I lost money, but because I disobeyed my own process. The money comes back. Discipline doesn't. Not easily. Every broken rule weakens your edge. Every moment of indulgence chips away at your control. And here's the hardest truth of all. Most traders never pass this stage. They study charts, memorize patterns, master systems, but never master themselves. They want certainty, but the market only offers probability. They crave excitement, but the market rewards boredom. They want to be right, but the market pays only those who survive. You can't buy discipline. You can't borrow it. You earn it one trade at a time, by doing the right thing when every nerve screams for the wrong one. Most will never get there. They'll keep chasing holy grails, blaming brokers, indicators, manipulation, anything but their own reflection. But those who do reach that level, who learn to act without emotion and wait without fear, discover something that feels almost like peace. That's when trading stops being gambling and becomes operation. That's when you stop reacting to the market and start operating within its laws. And the first law, the one that rules all others, is timing. Everything in speculation, profit, loss, patience, discipline depends on timing. There is a time to trade and a time to wait. The fool doesn't know the difference. The professional lives by it. Let's talk about that next. Timing is everything. It's the invisible law that governs every price, every move, every fortune made or lost in the market. Yet it's the one thing most traders never truly understand. They think timing means catching tops and bottoms, predicting the next breakout, or guessing when the crowd will pile in. But that's not timing. That's guessing dressed up as genius. True timing is rhythm, the rhythm of accumulation and distribution, the pulse of fear and greed, the pattern of human behavior that repeats endlessly because human nature doesn't change. I learned that by living inside the tape, by watching prices breathe, watching how volume swells when conviction builds and fades when confidence dies. The tape has a language of its own, and if you listen long enough, you begin to hear when it's whispering opportunity and when it's warning danger. Back in my early years, before electronic screens and blinking algorithms, I'd stand by the ticker for hours, studying every uptick, every downtick and how they clustered. To most men, it looked like noise. To me, it was a conversation. The tape was speaking in rhythm, telling me when the market was buying more than it appeared to, when big operators were quietly taking positions, and when the public was being lured into the trap. The crowd sees prices, the operator sees behavior, and behavior always reveals intention. It always shows you who's in control. That's what it means to read the market's pulse. You don't force interpretation. You observe until the pattern reveals itself. The trick isn't to predict. It's to wait until the market confirms what you already suspected. The market, you see, is never wrong. Opinions often are. When you stop trying to be smarter than the market, you finally start making money. I've had times when I was certain a stock should rise. The company was sound, the numbers good, the logic perfect, but the tape disagreed, and every time I ignored it, I paid for it. The tape is the final authority, not the newspaper, not the broker, not even your own conviction. If the price action doesn't agree with your opinion, it's your opinion that's wrong. That rule alone could save more traders than any strategy book ever written. But even when you learn to respect the market's rhythm, there's another law hidden within it, the time element. The hardest lesson I ever learned was that being right too early is the same as being wrong. You can spot the entire move, calculate it perfectly, and still lose money if you act before the market's ready. Timing, in this sense, isn't about the moment you think the move should begin. It's about the moment the market agrees with you. I've had brilliant ideas fail because I acted a week too soon, a day too soon, even an hour too soon. Each stock has its season, its natural gestation period. Force it before it's ripe, and you'll only bruise it. There was a time I was certain cotton was about to collapse. The fundamentals lined up like dominoes. The market was bloated, speculation rampant. I went short with conviction and size. For days, it refused to break. Every session, the price mocked me, moving higher, draining my patience and my capital. Eventually, I closed the trade in frustration. 2 weeks later, it broke exactly as I'd foreseen without me. That loss taught me what analysis never could. It's not enough to be right. You must be right at the right time. Patience isn't just a virtue. It's a form of intelligence. The time element is the bridge between understanding and profit. It separates the man who reacts from the man who anticipates. Most traders can identify what should happen. Few can wait for when it will happen. The market rewards those who respect its pace, not those who rush it. Think of it as a dance. You can know every step, every move, but if your timing is off, you'll always step on your partner's foot. The market's rhythm doesn't adjust to yours. You must adjust to it. When you learn to respect timing, you stop trying to control outcomes. You wait for alignment for price, volume, and sentiment to converge like stars before a storm. That's when you strike. That's the art of operating. I call it the time-price principle. Never act on time alone, and never act on price alone. Both must agree, both must confirm, or you're gambling, not speculating. It's the patience to let the market prove your opinion before you stake your capital. Most traders lose because they crave certainty. They want proof before they act, and yet they act before the proof appears. They live between fear of missing out and fear of being wrong, trapped in perpetual indecision. Timing ends that struggle because it teaches you to wait for the market's signal, not your own. In the bucket shop days, I'd see it all the time. Young men crowding the counter, desperate to buy because they felt the move coming. Their intuition wasn't wrong. They were just early, and early is fatal. The market doesn't pay for potential. It pays for precision. I remember one afternoon watching a stock hover near a breakout level. Everyone in the room leaned forward as if willing it to move. I stood back and waited. It ticked up once, then twice, and the crowd erupted, buying hand over fist. I did nothing. A moment later, the stock collapsed 3 points, taking their hopes with it. I smiled quietly. It wasn't malice. It was confirmation. The tape wasn't ready, and I'd listened. That's the discipline. Timing demands the discipline to do nothing when others can't sit still. It's the same patience that keeps you from chasing moves you've already missed and from forcing trades you don't understand. It's not glamorous, but it's the only thing that works. The market moves when it's ready, not when you need it to. The operator who forgets that soon learns the market's most brutal lesson. Impatience is indistinguishable from ignorance. Once you master timing, you realize something deeper, that every element of trading is connected. Risk, patience, discipline, timing. They're not separate laws, but parts of one system. They all exist to serve the same goal: survival. And survival isn't just about keeping your capital intact. It's about keeping your clarity intact. It's about staying calm enough, long enough, to see the next opportunity. Now, before we close, there's one more truth to face, the one that ties everything together. It's not about when you trade or even how much you risk. It's about who you become in the process. The market doesn't just test your strategy, it tests your nature. It forces you to evolve from a trader into an operator. That transformation is the final stage, and it's the hardest of all. Because once you reach it, you stop chasing trades and start building laws, your own personal code that nothing, not panic nor euphoria, can break. Let's talk about that now. When I speak about becoming an operator, I don't mean some mechanical performer who pushes buttons on a screen or follows someone else's formula. I mean a man who's fused knowledge and temperament so tightly that action and restraint come from the same place: understanding. The crowd trades, the operator operates. The crowd looks for excitement, the operator looks for evidence. The crowd wants to win trades, the operator wants to execute correctly. And the irony is, by caring less about being right, the operator ends up right far, more often than the crowd ever will. That's because the operator has no need to force the market into his plans. He works inside its flow, adjusting, waiting, attacking only when probability and timing converge. It's not intelligence that separates them, it's detachment. I learned detachment after years of losing money in the most emotional way possible. There's no feeling quite like watching a position that once looked brilliant turn into a slow-motion train wreck. You sit there, eyes fixed, mind racing through 1,000 excuses. It'll bounce. It's oversold. Just one more rally and I'll get out. And every minute you delay, you sink deeper into denial. I've been there, more than once. You tell yourself it's temporary. You double down. You add to a loser because you can't bear to admit defeat. That's how most traders destroy themselves, not from lack of skill, but from refusal to accept what the price is trying to tell them. The operator never does that. He adds only to strength, never to weakness. That principle, add to strength, never to weakness, sounds simple, but it's the hardest habit to build. When you're winning, the mind whispers, take profit before it disappears. When you're losing, it screams, hold on, it'll come back. That inversion is the essence of human nature, and it's why the market punishes the many to reward the few. I learned to pyramid only when the market confirmed me, not before. Every addition to a winning trade had to prove itself with profit first. It's the same as climbing a ladder one rung at a time, testing the weight before you trust the next step. You don't throw your whole body upward in one motion. You build support with every move. One of the greatest trades of my career came from that discipline. It was 1915, Bethlehem Steel. The war had just begun to feed industrial demand, and the market was humming with opportunity. I took my first position small, just a feeler. And as the price moved in my favor, I added more, then more, each position justified by the profit already earned. By the time the move climaxed, I was holding a fortune, not because I'd guessed the top or bottom, but because I'd built a structure of profit upon profit, like a pyramid rising from bedrock. Every layer was solid, every addition self-financed by the strength beneath it. That's what it means to operate, to make the market pay for your conviction, not your ego. Traders often ask, how big should I go? But the better question is, how strong is the foundation beneath my size? A winning trade should always feel justified, not reckless. It should grow organically, not explosively. The operator never bets all at once. He builds positions like a craftsman, fitting each piece where it belongs, letting time do its work. That's what most people can't stand: time. They want the entire move now, the entire profit immediately. But the market doesn't reward impatience. It rewards structure. To operate well, you must also be able to detach not just from emotion, but from identity. You must stop needing to be right. Stop needing the market to prove you smart. Stop needing approval from others who trade worse than you. When you reach that level, a trade is just a trade, not a judgment of your worth, not a verdict on your intelligence. It's data, it's probability, it's execution. You do your job, you record the result, and you move on. Most traders never get that far because they keep taking the market personally. They think it remembers their mistakes or owes them a rebound. The market doesn't even know your name. The moment you stop caring what it thinks of you, you begin to see it clearly. It's like playing chess against an opponent who doesn't notice you. You can't bluff it, can't flatter it, can't talk your way into a win. You can only play by the board in front of you. Every move has logic, every mistake has consequence, and every emotion is a weakness your opponent will exploit. That's why detachment is liberation. It frees your mind to see the board as it is, not as you wish it to be. You can't see opportunity through the fog of self-importance. Once you accept that, you begin to operate with precision, patience, and peace. Trading stopped being torture for me the moment I accepted that the market isn't a moral judge. It doesn't punish you for pride. It simply reveals what pride costs. It doesn't reward humility. It just lets you last longer. That's why I always tell traders the goal isn't to predict, it's to survive. You don't have to be smarter than the market. You just have to outlast the mistakes of everyone else. Survival is the only real edge that exists. And that brings me to the last truth I can offer you. After all these years, after all the cycles of boom and bust, after every fortune made and lost, I've learned that trading is not a battle against the market. It's a battle for self-control. Every rule I've shared, from cutting losses to pyramiding strength to respecting timing, exists for one reason: to keep you alive long enough to benefit from your own experience. Experience is the only teacher that charges full tuition. Every loss is a lesson prepaid. Every win is a test to see whether you've truly learned. So understand this: the market will always find new ways to fool the careless, flatter the reckless, and destroy the proud. But if you learn to operate calmly, patiently, and with structure, you'll see what most traders never will. You'll see that success isn't measured in profits at all. It's measured in endurance. It's measured in how little damage you take when you're wrong and how long you can stay in the game when you're right. That's the secret the 90% never learn, and the reason they keep failing. Because in the end, speculation is a mirror held up to your own nature. The better you know yourself, the clearer the market becomes. But the moment you think you've conquered it, it will remind you who's in charge. The laws never change. Risk, discipline, timing, detachment. They're the same today as they were when I started. Master them, and the profits will follow naturally. Ignore them, and no amount of luck will save you. I've always said the market isn't your enemy, but it isn't your friend either. It's a mirror, a teacher, a ruthless judge of every decision you make. It has no memory and no mercy. It doesn't reward intention or effort, only execution. When I was younger, I used to think the market cared whether I was right or wrong, that if I studied hard enough, stayed up late enough, worked more diligently than the rest, it would recognize my effort and pay me for it. It never did. The market pays for results, not for sweat. And when you finally accept that, you begin to see that all your real work happens before you ever place a trade. Your thinking, your planning, your preparation. That's where money is made or lost. Once the order is sent, the outcome is out of your hands. The price doesn't care about your reasoning, it only cares about your discipline. Every great speculator I've ever met shared the same quality: patience born of experience. They all understood that time, not talent, is the real differentiator. They'd sit quietly through the noise, waiting for that moment when the odds tilted in their favor, when all the elements lined up just right, and then they'd act swiftly, decisively, without hesitation. There's a rhythm to great trading, a pulse that moves between stillness and sudden motion, and the secret is knowing when to let it pull you and when to resist. I've waited months for the right condition to appear, and then made more money in a single week than I'd made in the 6 before it. Most people can't understand that because they're addicted to activity. They need to feel involved every day, every hour, every tick. But the market doesn't pay you for how much you do it, pays you for how well you wait. Waiting is the hardest part of speculation because it forces you to face yourself. When nothing's happening, the mind starts inventing reasons to act. It whispers about missed opportunities, lost profits, wasted time. It tells you stories about other traders making money while you sit on your hands. That's how discipline erodes one anxious thought at a time. I used to think I was missing out whenever I wasn't in the market. I'd force trades just to feel alive, and the market would punish me for my impatience. The lesson was simple, though it took years to learn. Inactivity isn't wasted time. It's preparation. Every period of rest is a sharpening of judgment, a strengthening of patience, a rehearsal for the next big move. The older I got, the more I realized that the market is really just a mirror for human nature. It's the same greed, the same fear, the same impatience repeating itself over and over. Prices change, instruments change, technology changes, but human behavior doesn't. The operator who studies behavior has a permanent edge over the one who studies only charts. Because when you understand how people think, you understand how prices move. When the crowd grows euphoric, you know exhaustion is near. When they panic, you know opportunity is rising. The tape tells the truth, but only if you learn to see through the emotion that drives it. I've seen countless traders fall into the same trap. They think knowledge will save them. They read every book, follow every indicator, memorize every pattern, and still lose money. Why? Because knowledge without control is noise. What matters isn't what you know, but how you act when that knowledge is tested. The market doesn't care if you can explain why a stock should rise. It only cares what you'll do when it doesn't. You can have all the theory in the world, but if you can't cut a loss, if you can't wait for confirmation, if you can't stop yourself from chasing, none of it will matter. The only traders who last are the ones who master self-respect, respect for their rules, their risk, their limits. They treat their capital as sacred, their discipline as law. They don't ask for certainty. They demand consistency. They don't hope for luck. They prepare for failure. They know that every great move begins the same way, quietly, invisibly, unnoticed by the crowd, and they're patient enough to wait for it. They aren't seduced by the market's noise, and they don't flinch when everyone else loses their heads. The truth is, trading doesn't get easier. You just get calmer. The emotions never disappear. Fear still creeps in. Greed still whispers. Doubt still stirs. But you stop listening to them. You acknowledge them, then act according to plan. The professional isn't fearless. He's just trained his mind not to obey fear's commands. That's what separates a survivor from a statistic. I've lived through more booms and busts than I can count. I've seen the ticker fly in panic. I've seen men faint on trading floors. I've seen fortunes evaporate before lunch and rebuild by dinner. Through it all, the only constant truth has been this: the laws never change. Risk, patience, discipline, timing, detachment, these are the pillars. Everything else is noise. You can dress them up with new language or new technology, but at their core, the principles remain eternal. The same greed that drove the bucket shops of my youth drives the screens of today. The same fear that crushed men in 1907 crushes them now. Technology evolves, but human nature does not. So, if you take one thing from everything I've said, let it be this: you don't fail because the market beats you. You fail because you stop learning before it's done teaching. Every mistake you make is tuition. Every loss is a teacher. And every lesson ignored will come back with interest. Protect your capital. Trade only when your plan and the market agree. Sit tight when they do. Cut losses when they don't. The rest is just noise. And as we close this lesson, remember the market isn't out to destroy you. It's out to reveal you. It shows you who you are when no one's watching. It strips away illusion, ego, and pretense until only discipline remains. That's the real reward of speculation, not the money, but the mastery of yourself, the mastery of patience under pressure, the mastery of fear in the face of chaos. That's what every great operator understands. And if you've stayed with me this long, then you already have what most traders never will, the willingness to face the truth about yourself. Keep that courage alive. Because in my next lesson, I'll show you the most important thing I ever learned: how to know when a stock is truly ready to move, long before the crowd can see it. The secret isn't prediction, it's preparation. And once you understand that, you'll stop chasing opportunity and start waiting for it to come to you. There's a silence that comes when you've been through enough markets, a kind of heavy quiet that replaces the noise of greed and fear, a stillness earned through years of watching the same mistakes repeat with different faces. You stop needing to prove anything to anyone, even to yourself. You no longer feel the thrill of being right or the despair of being wrong. You just act when it's time and wait when it's not. That's the operator's peace, the knowledge that nothing truly new ever happens in speculation, only new participants learning old lessons at their own expense. I sometimes think that if every trader in the world could sit still long enough to hear that truth, half of them would stop trading, and the rest would finally start learning. When I look back over the arc of my life, I see that every great success came from the same three qualities: observation, patience, and discipline, and every loss came from abandoning one of them. Observation gave me clarity, patience gave me timing, and discipline gave me survival. Whenever I forgot that trinity, I paid for it. The market has a cruel way of teaching humility. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and if you ignore the whisper, it will break you until you listen. I've seen men who thought themselves invincible reduced to ruin in a single week. I've been one of them. But I've also seen those same ruins become foundations for wisdom. The market never stops testing you, and that's its genius. It offers lessons to those who endure and punishment to those who rush. The hardest lesson to accept is that speculation is not about conquest but endurance. Everyone comes in dreaming of freedom, financial freedom, freedom from the 9-to-5 grind, freedom from limits. But what they find is a discipline so strict it feels like confinement. They imagine the life of a trader is full of excitement, but the truth is, it's a life of waiting, of analyzing, of repeating the same rituals day after day until they become second nature. That's why most people can't do it. They don't want to be free. They want to be entertained. And the market doesn't entertain. It educates, harshly, endlessly, and without apology. Over time, I learned that the real art of trading isn't in the buying or the selling, it's in the not doing. It's the ability to hold your judgment until the market has shown its hand. It's the ability to see a setup, to recognize it for what it is, and still have the discipline to wait for confirmation. That's something no indicator can give you, no book can teach you. It comes from scars, from the losses that taught you what impatience costs. The irony is that the biggest money is made in the smallest number of moves, but you have to sit through hundreds of temptations to earn those few moments of alignment. Sometimes I think of trading like mining for gold. You dig through mountains of worthless rock for a few ounces of pure metal, and it's the digging, not the finding, that breaks most men. But the ones who endure, who learn to see the rhythm in the labor, they come to love the process itself. They stop digging for gold and start digging for understanding. That's when trading stops being a job and becomes an art. You're no longer hunting profit. You're refining perception. You begin to see the market not as a battlefield, but as a mirror, reflecting universal truths about patience, about pride, about fear, about human nature itself. If I could speak to every young trader starting out today, I'd tell them this: stop looking for the secret to making money and start learning the secret to keeping it. The former is easy. The latter is what makes the difference between a survivor and a statistic. Never average down a loss. Never fight the tape. Never trade because you're bored. And never confuse activity with achievement. If you follow those simple rules, you'll already be ahead of 90% of the crowd. And if you can combine those rules with patience, real patience, the kind that feels like discipline, not delay, then you'll last long enough to see the truth for yourself. I've spent my life studying markets, but what I really studied was human behavior. I watched men panic when they should have held, and hold when they should have sold. I watched crowds turn brilliant ideas into bubbles and solid companies into disasters. I saw the same patterns repeat. Again and again the faces changed, The fashions changed, but the emotions never did. That's when I understood that speculation isn't about prediction. It's about observation. It's about recognizing that the market's movements are just the aggregate heartbeat of human nature. And once you understand that, you can begin to anticipate how people will behave, not what prices will do, but how people will react to what prices do. That's the real edge. Every great operator I ever knew eventually came to the same conclusion. The game doesn't change, only the players do. The names on the ticker evolve, the tools become faster, the screens brighter, but the underlying truth remains the same. Success in speculation comes down to emotional mastery. The one who can sit tight when others tremble, the one who can act when others freeze, the one who can close a position without hesitation, when the rule says so, even when every instinct screams otherwise. That's the one who wins. Not because he's lucky, not because he's gifted, but because he's disciplined. And so, we come to the end of this lesson, and if you've followed me this far, then you've already done something rare. You've stayed. You've listened. You've thought, not about how to make a quick gain, but about how to endure, how to protect, how to operate. That patience alone puts you ahead of most who will ever touch a market. But don't stop here. This is only the beginning. In my next lesson, I'll take you deeper into the law that governs every move I ever made, the law of timing. I'll show you how I knew when a stock was ready to move long before the crowd could see it, how I combined time and price to measure the moment when probability became inevitability. You'll see that it isn't prediction, it's precision. And once you learn that, you'll understand why I always said the only real edge in the market is survival, because survival gives you time, and time gives you everything. If you've ever stayed in the market long enough to see both the calm and the chaos, you know that survival isn't just a tactic, it's the whole game. The longer you last, the clearer the patterns become, not because the market gets simpler, but because your mind does. The noise fades, the distractions thin out, and what's left is the rhythm, the quiet heartbeat beneath the chaos. You stop caring about being right this week or wrong next week, because you finally see that the only real measure of mastery is endurance. Every other trader is fighting to win the moment. The operator is fighting to stay in the arena long enough to let the law of probabilities pay him back. That's the secret most never discover. Time is the one leverage that belongs only to the disciplined. The market has no mercy for those who need constant validation. It doesn't care if you're clever, if you've read 100 books, or if you've built the perfect system. It only respects those who survive its storms. I learned that lesson too many times to count. There were days when I sat in my office with the blinds drawn, watching my positions fall apart, feeling that sick heaviness in my chest that only comes from watching money reel, hard-earned money disappear point by point. I'd pace the floor, run my hands through my hair, and curse myself for not selling sooner, for not listening to my own rules. And then, when the dust settled, I'd sit down, open my records, and study every mistake. That ritual saved me more than once, because every loss has a reason, and every reason holds a rule. You just have to have the courage to write it down and the humility to obey it next time. Most men don't. They blame the market, the broker, the manipulation, anything but their own reflection. I've done it myself. Early on called the game unfair, told myself the odds were rigged, but the truth is, the market is perfectly fair. It gives every man the same test: patience, discipline, and emotional control. Most just fail it. The crowd always wants to believe there's an external cause, a villain, a secret manipulation. But the only manipulation that matters is the one inside your own head. The market isn't out to fool you. You fool yourself by refusing to see what's in front of you. You have to understand the market is made of people, and people are predictable. They panic together. They get greedy together. They tell each other stories to justify both. Every crash I ever lived through began with confidence and ended with confession, and every boom began with disbelief and ended with delusion. Once you've seen that cycle enough times, you stop being surprised by it. You start to expect it. And that's when you finally stop losing sleep over the noise. You start focusing on your own behavior, the one thing you can actually control. That's the quiet transformation every real trader must go through. You begin with ambition, you move through pain, and you end with discipline. Ambition brings you in, pain humbles you, and discipline keeps you alive. I used to think the market was a battlefield that my job was to fight, to conquer, to win. But I was wrong. The market isn't a battlefield. It's a school. The tuition is steep, but the lessons are priceless. Every dollar you lose buys you clarity, and every rule you keep buys you longevity. The problem is that most traders drop out before they've learned anything. They run out of money, or worse, they run out of patience. You have to last. That's all. That's the law no one writes in the books. Stay solvent. Stay disciplined. Stay humble. The market will eventually reward you for surviving its lessons. Because the longer you're in the game, the more obvious the truth becomes. The market's purpose isn't to make you rich, it's to make you wise. The money is the byproduct of understanding. The real reward is control. Control over yourself, your impulses, your greed, your fear. Once you have that, the profits follow like a shadow. I've seen too many good men destroyed not by bad markets but by good ones. The bull market is more dangerous than any crash. In a crash, the danger is obvious. In a bull run, it hides behind euphoria. You start to think you're smarter than the market, that you've found the rhythm, that you can't miss. That's when the trap closes. The bull market makes gamblers of us all, and the market has infinite patience. It will let you think you've mastered it just long enough to make you overreach. Then, when your guard is down, it takes everything back and more. That's why I say the real art of speculation isn't in winning. It's in not losing when you think you can't. I remember once, after a long winning streak, feeling invincible. Every trade I touched turned to gold. I started ignoring my own rules. I began to believe that the laws of probability no longer applied to me. I doubled down on a position that didn't deserve it, added to weakness, ignored my stops, and told myself the market was just shaking out the weak hands. By the time I accepted I was one of them, it was too late. The loss wiped out months of work. That moment taught me something I've never forgotten. The most dangerous feeling in trading isn't fear, it's confidence. Fear makes you cautious. Confidence makes you careless. The market rewards neither. So I learned to approach every trade as if it were my first and could be my last. No arrogance, no attachment, no nostalgia, just process. The same way a surgeon approaches the operating table, calm, focused, detached. He doesn't think about the thousands of successful surgeries behind him or the one that went wrong last month. He just follows his procedure. That's what operating means, acting without hesitation, without pride, without fear. Every trade is an operation on your own psychology, and the only question that matters is whether you followed your system when it mattered most. That's why I always tell traders, if you lose money but followed your rules, you haven't lost. You've invested in discipline. But if you make money by breaking your rules, you've planted the seed of destruction. It will grow in silence until the next storm. And when it hits, that lack of discipline will bring everything down. The market forgives many things, ignorance, bad timing, bad luck, but it never forgives arrogance. Arrogance is the belief that you can get away with breaking your own law, and that's the one belief that always gets punished. So as you leave this lesson behind, remember this: survival isn't passive. It's not just about staying out of trouble. It's an active discipline, the daily decision to respect risk, to wait for your time, to protect your capital, and to let the market come to you. Because if you can stay in the game long enough, if you can endure the cycles without losing your nerve or your clarity, eventually you'll see what I saw, that the market was never your opponent. It was your reflection. And all it ever asked of you was patience, humility, and self-control. That's the truth most traders never reach because they don't survive long enough to find it. But you will. You've already done what 90% never do. You've learned to listen. Keep listening, keep watching, keep sitting tight. The next great move is always coming, and it always belongs to the man who's still standing when it does. Every lesson I've shared, every story, every rule, every scar I've carried across the years leads to this one truth. The market doesn't break men, it reveals them. It shows you the parts of yourself you didn't know existed. Your patience, your fear, your arrogance, your humility. It drags them into the light and asks you a simple question: will you master them, or will they master you? I've watched the market strip away everything from men who were sure they were untouchable. I've seen it humble geniuses, silence experts, and turn pride into poverty in a matter of days. But I've also seen it reward the quiet, the patient, the disciplined, the ones who learn that real power isn't in predicting the next move, but in controlling their own. When I look back over all the cycles I've lived through, the booms that lifted empires and the crashes that erased them, I see a single pattern running through it all. The men who lasted weren't the loudest or the boldest or even the smartest. They were the ones who learned how to lose correctly, how to cut their losses when they were small and live to fight another day. They were the ones who treated capital like oxygen, not like fuel. They never confused being active with being profitable. They never let excitement masquerade as opportunity. They learned to sit tight when the move was theirs and to walk away when it wasn't. And that's why they survived, not because they found a secret, but because they stopped fighting the obvious truths that most traders spend their lives ignoring. Most people think trading is about courage, but it isn't. It's about humility. Courage will get you into a trade. Humility will get you out of a bad one. Courage lets you act. Humility lets you adapt. When I was young, I thought bravery meant holding on, defying the tape, proving the market wrong. Now I know that bravery is admitting when I am wrong and acting before the damage grows. Every trader must learn that lesson eventually. Some learn it with small losses, others with ruin. But everyone learns it. The market doesn't forgive stubbornness, it punishes it. The law is simple, yet most never follow it. Protect your capital. Trade only when the market and your plan agree. When you win, let the profit run. When you lose, let the trade go. Don't pray, don't hope, don't argue. The market doesn't care about your opinion, and neither should you. Once you've made your plan, trust it more than your emotions. That's what turns an amateur into an operator. That's what separates the 9 who fail from the 1 who survives. I've spent my life searching for certainty, only to discover that the only thing you can ever be certain of is your own behavior. Prices change, trends shift, systems fail, but your discipline can endure. And when everything else falls apart, that's what saves you, because the market will test you again and again. It will tempt you when you're weak and starve you when you're strong. It will make you doubt your method, your courage, your very identity. And the only answer to all of it, the only weapon that works, is self-control. Everything else is decoration. So if you take nothing else from me, take this: never stop learning, never stop refining, never stop watching yourself as closely as you watch the market. Because every time you think you've mastered the game, it will show you a new version of your own weakness. It's not punishment, it's instruction. Every loss is tuition. Every profit is a test. The question is not whether you can make money, anyone can get lucky. The question is whether you can keep it, whether you can hold it without letting it change you, whether you can wake up the next morning and operate by the same rules that brought you here. When I was younger, I thought the end goal of trading was wealth. Now I understand that it's wisdom. Wealth fades, wisdom compounds. The money I made came and went in cycles, but the lessons stayed. They hardened into principles, and those principles are the only fortune I can never lose. If you live by them, you'll make your own fortune, not just in the market, but in yourself. So here's my final challenge to you. When the market tests you, and it will remember that your job isn't to win every trade. Your job is to survive long enough to learn from each one. Don't seek perfection. Seek persistence. Don't chase excitement. Chase endurance. Because if you can keep your capital intact and your discipline unbroken, you'll be around for the next opportunity, and it always comes. The market never stops offering chances. It only stops offering them to those who quit too soon. The market isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. Every loss is a lesson. Every gain a reminder that discipline works. And if you've come this far, you already have the one thing the 90% never will: the patience to listen. Protect that patience. Guard it the way you guard your capital, because they're the same thing. And when you're ready for the next lesson, come with me. In my next teaching, I'll reveal the 3 laws of timing: how I learned to read the rhythm of the market, how I knew when a stock was ready to move long before the crowd could see it, and how I used time and price together to turn patience into profit. Click ahead, because knowing when to act turns knowledge into mastery. The secret isn't in prediction, it's in preparation. And if you've learned anything from me tonight, it's this: preparation is the only way to survive long enough to win. If you've listened this far, then you understand something most traders never will: that this game was never about chasing wealth. It was about shaping character. The longer you live inside the markets, the more you realize it's not a contest of intelligence or technology or access, but of temperament. The market doesn't care if you were right yesterday or wrong tomorrow. It only measures who you are when everything turns against you. Every tick tests your patience, every swing tests your courage, and every loss tests your honesty. It forces you to answer the question most men spend their lives avoiding. Can you stay calm when the world refuses to obey you? That's the essence of this business, not brilliance, not prediction, but composure. The market is a living thing, breathing through human emotion, moving through cycles of hope and despair. You can't fight its rhythm any more than you can command the sea to stop rising. You can only learn to ride it with humility, with rhythm, with timing. I used to think I could impose my will on the market. I thought if I worked harder, studied longer, calculated faster, I could bend it to my plan. But the market has no interest in your plans. It only reflects your patience, and it will keep doing so until you finally surrender your pride and learn to move with it, not against it. I've seen entire generations of traders rise and fall, each believing they were smarter than the ones before. They build new systems, invent new tools, rename the same principles, but beneath it all the story is the same. A man comes in with dreams of mastery, learns pain, loses money, loses confidence, and either quits or learns to stop fighting what he can't control. Every generation repeats the pattern because every generation believes human nature has evolved beyond greed and fear, and every generation learns that it hasn't. That's why the laws endure. They're not market laws, they're human laws. They governed me in the 1900s, and they govern traders today. Risk, patience, discipline, timing, they're the timeless currency of speculation. When I sit in silence and remember the years, the crashes, the recoveries, the faces that came and went, I don't think about the money. I think about the lessons burned into me through failure. I think about the mornings I woke up sure I'd lost it all, and the nights I went to sleep not knowing if I could ever begin again. And I think about the strange calm that always followed the chaos, that moment when I stopped trying to win and started trying to understand. That's when I grew. That's when I became an operator, not a gambler. That's when I stopped needing the market to make me rich and started letting it make me wise. People often ask me what the secret was, the one thing that made it all work, and I tell them the truth they never want to hear. There is no secret, only laws. The same ones you've heard throughout this lesson: protect your capital, cut losses fast, let profits run, follow the trend, sit tight. When you're right, stand aside when you're not. These rules sound simple, almost boring, but they're the whole game. Every fortune ever made in the market was built on them, and every fortune ever lost was lost by breaking them. You don't need genius to follow them, just discipline, and that's what makes them so difficult. Discipline is the rarest commodity on Wall Street. The men who succeed are not those who know the most, but those who do the least, those who can wait for the right moment and act with precision, those who can absorb pain without panic and success without pride. They are not seduced by the thrill of action or the comfort of certainty. They don't need to be told they're right because the market already tells them when they are. They measure themselves not by the size of their profits, but by the quality of their decisions. They understand that every trade, win or lose, is just another data point in a lifelong experiment of self-control. That's how you survive, by treating speculation as a business, not a crusade. So, as I close this chapter, I want you to remember one thing above all. The market is a mirror, and you will see in it exactly what you bring to it. Bring fear, and it will feed it back to you until you're consumed. Bring greed, and it will amplify it until you choke on it. But bring discipline, patience, and humility, and the market will eventually reward you with something far more valuable than money mastery. Not mastery of the market, because no one ever truly has that, but mastery of yourself. That's the only kind that lasts, the only kind that can't be taken away by a bad week, a bad trade, or a bad market. When I was young, I thought the market was about speed. I thought if I could react faster, I'd win. But the older I got, the more I realized it was about stillness. The stillness to wait, to watch, to let things unfold. You don't outthink the market. You outwait it. You survive its noise until it finally reveals its pattern. And when it does, you act with quiet conviction. That's the difference between the gambler and the operator. The gambler needs constant proof, but the operator trusts the process. The gambler plays for excitement. The operator works for understanding. So here we are, at the end of this long road, and if you've understood even a fraction of what I've tried to share, you'll never look at the market or yourself the same way again. You'll stop chasing trades and start cultivating patience. You'll stop seeking luck and start respecting law. You'll stop fearing losses and start learning from them. And one day, when the crowd around you panics, you'll feel that rare stillness rise inside you, that calm certainty that you've seen this all before. You'll smile, not because you're sure you'll win, but because you know you'll survive, and that quiet survival is where true wealth lives. So keep studying, keep sitting tight, keep listening to the tape. The market will keep teaching as long as you're humble enough to learn. And when you're ready, I'll meet you in the next lesson where I'll open the door to what I call the 3 laws of timing. That's where you'll learn how to feel the market's pulse, how to sense the moment when potential turns to motion, and how to strike while others are still debating. Because in the end, it's not enough to know what to do. You must know when to do it. That's what turns knowledge into mastery and patience into profit. Until then, guard your capital, guard your mind, and remember the only real edge in this game is survival. Everything else is noise. If I could leave you with one last picture, it would be of the trading room long after the noise has stopped. The tickers are still, the telephone's silent, the clerk's gone home. The air feels thick, heavy with the ghosts of decisions made and unmade, of fortunes gained and lost in the space of hours. In that emptiness, you can almost hear the heartbeat of the market itself, slow, patient, eternal. It doesn't care about who came before or who will come next. It only waits for the next hand brave or foolish enough to test it. That's the world I lived in for most of my life. And in that world, I learned that the market doesn't reward the bold or the reckless. It rewards the prepared. It waits for those who have the courage to wait with it. I used to think of the market as a great, wild animal, beautiful, dangerous, unpredictable. In my youth, I tried to tame it, to predict its movements, to force it to obey my will. I thought if I could just learn its habits, its patterns, its logic, I could ride it wherever I wanted to go. But you don't tame the market. You learn to move with it. You study its moods, its silences, its sudden bursts of violence. You stop trying to dominate it, and instead learn to anticipate its rhythm. It's like the sea. The moment you try to fight it, it drowns you. The only way to survive is to learn to float, to move with its current, to know when to dive deep and when to rise for air. That's the real art of speculation harmony, not conquest. The longer I traded, the more I realized that survival isn't a single decision, but 1,000 small ones. It's the discipline to cut a loss when your pride wants to hold. It's the patience to sit on your hands while others chase the noise. It's the humility to take a profit and walk away while greed whispers that there's more to be made. Each of those choices seems small, but together they build the architecture of endurance. And endurance, not brilliance, not prediction, not luck, is what keeps you in the game long enough to prosper. You don't win because you're clever. You win because you're still here when everyone else has burned out. Every trader wants to believe he'll be the exception, that his story will end differently, that he'll find a way to outsmart the law of averages. I used to think that too. But the market has a way of showing you that there are no exceptions, only confirmations. The laws that governed my trades a century ago govern yours now, and they'll govern those who come after. That's what makes them laws. They're not inventions, they're observations. They describe how people behave under pressure, and as long as people are human, they'll keep repeating the same mistakes. The best you can do is learn to step aside while the crowd destroys itself. Sometimes people ask me if I regret anything, the losses, the risks, the pain that came with a life in speculation. I don't. Every loss taught me something no victory could. Every setback stripped away another layer of illusion until all that was left was the truth. And the truth is simple. The market doesn't exist to make you rich. It exists to make you honest. Honest about your weaknesses, your habits, your desires. If you can face those honestly, you'll find a kind of peace that few ever know. A peace that comes not from certainty, but from acceptance. You stop needing to predict. You stop needing to win every trade. You stop needing to prove anything. You just act when the time is right and wait when it isn't. That's freedom. When I say that survival is the only edge, I don't mean it as a slogan. I mean it as a law of nature. Every creature that's ever walked this earth obeys it. The strongest don't always survive, the most adaptable do. The market rewards adaptability above all. The moment you stop learning, the moment you decide you've figured it out, the market starts writing your obituary. I've seen it happen to men far smarter than I ever was, men who built systems, fortunes, reputations, and lost them all because they forgot to stay humble before the tape. The tape humbles everyone eventually. It's not an enemy. It's a mirror that shows you how small you are and how much you still have to learn. And so, as I leave you with these words, remember that every trade you take from this moment forward carries a choice not between profit and loss, but between discipline and chaos. Choose discipline, choose patience, choose self-control, because every time you do, you'll be building something far greater than wealth. You'll be building the habit of survival. That's the only thing that separates the few who make fortunes from the many who lose them. Not genius, not systems, just survival. The market will continue long after we're gone. New names will appear on the tickers. New traders will arrive full of confidence, full of ambition, full of dreams. They'll make the same mistakes, learn the same lessons, fight the same battles. And if they're lucky, some of them will come to understand what I've told you here, that speculation isn't about conquering the market, it's about mastering yourself. The rest will vanish, as all gamblers do, into the silence of the crowd. So, if you remember nothing else, remember this. Patience is the only wealth that never loses value. It compounds quietly, invisibly, until one day it turns into wisdom. And once you have wisdom, you'll never fear another crash, another panic, another correction, because you'll know they're not endings, they're beginnings. The market always resets itself, always clears the field for those who can wait. And if you can wait, you'll always have another chance. Now go back to your charts, your journals, your records. Study your trades the way a scientist studies his experiments. Keep learning, keep adapting, keep sitting tight. The lessons I've shared aren't mine alone. They belong to every trader who ever lived long enough to learn them. Guard them well, because in the end, the market doesn't destroy the disciplined, it delivers them. And when it does, you'll realize that the real profit was never the money at all. It was the